Imagine spending 15 years building a company from nothing. No inheritance, no connections, no shortcuts. Just work, sacrifice, and a reputation so clean that nobody could ever take it from you. Now, imagine waking up one morning to find out that your business partner of 12 years, the man you treated like a brother, had spent the last 2 years carefully, methodically, planning your complete destruction. Not to keep the company, to take everything, and to wipe your name off the map for good. That's what happened to Rachel Donovan, financial consultant in Atlanta, 41 years old, single mom, and the woman who was about to learn that the coldest revenge isn't made of screaming or threats. It's made of numbers, of dates, and of a single file he never thought she'd be able to find. This is the story of how Rachel Donovan lost everything in one Tuesday afternoon, and how she spent the next 8 months putting every piece of the puzzle back together, until the day she pushed back, hard, with interest. Stay until the end. You're going to want to see how this one lands.
I remember exactly what I was doing when my life changed. It was a Tuesday in March, 7:40 in the morning. I was standing on the 12th floor of our office in Midtown Atlanta, looking out the glass wall at a view I had personally picked out. Because of the light, the city line, and because on clear mornings you could see all the way to Stone Mountain. I had a cup of coffee in my hand, still hot, and a smile on my face that I didn't know yet would be the last one for a very long time. I had built Donovan and Webb Financial Consulting from the ground up, or close to it, because Marcus came in 2 years after I already had my first clients locked in. 15 years in the financial industry, 8 as majority partner. We managed the wealth of 142 clients. Total portfolio under management, $470 million. 470 million. I knew the names of my clients' kids. I knew which one was afraid of flying, which one had gone through a bad divorce the year before, which one needed a call on their birthday because family had drifted away. I didn't just manage money, I managed trust. And to me, that was the difference between a consultant and a real professional. Marcus always said I was too sentimental for this business. He was right, just not for the reason he meant. At 8:02, my phone buzzed. I set the coffee down, picked up the phone, and saw the name on the screen, Elliot Crane. Elliot was our biggest client, 72 million under management, founder and chairman of the Crane Capital Group, a man I'd known for 11 years, who had referred me to 7 other clients, who had called me when his daughter needed advice about her first apartment investment. The message said, "Rachel, we need to talk. Today, in person. This isn't about returns." My first thought was, something's wrong with his portfolio. Maybe the rebalancing we did last quarter, that's probably it. I wrote back, "Of course, Elliot. I'm free at 10. He responded in under 30 seconds. "Not at the office. Morton's, 10 o'clock. Morton's was an upscale steakhouse 3 blocks from our building. Elliot had never met me there. We met at the office, in formal meetings, or at industry events. A steakhouse at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, alone. I put the phone in my pocket, finished my coffee, and thought, this isn't going to be an easy conversation. I had absolutely no idea just how hard it was going to be. I got to Morton's at 9:58. Elliot was already there. Gray suit, no tie, no expression on his face. I sat down across from him and said, "Elliot, good to see you. What's going on?" He looked at me for about 3 seconds without saying anything. Then he reached into the bag beside his chair, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the table toward me. I opened it. It was a formal contract termination notice. My hand froze on the paper. I looked up at him. "Elliot." "Rachel." Low voice, steady. "I've received information, serious information, about how my portfolio has been managed over the last 18 months, about transfers I never authorized, about allocations that benefited a third party I don't know, and about decisions that cost my portfolio significantly more than the losses I was told about." The world stopped. I heard the words, but it took me a moment to process them. Like he was speaking a language I didn't quite recognize. "Unauthorized transfers," I repeated. "Elliot, every transaction has a signature, a record, a documented authorization. You know that. You've seen the quarterly reports." "Rachel." He raised his hand gently. "I didn't come here to debate. I came because you called me when my daughter needed help, and I thought you deserved to know before you read it somewhere else. Before I read it somewhere else." "Elliot, what's about to happen?" He stood up, tucked the bag under his arm, and said, "My attorney has already been in touch with the regulators. I'm not the only complaint." And he walked out. I sat there in the chair with the open envelope in my hand, in the middle of a midtown Atlanta steakhouse, completely alone. The waiter came over and asked if I'd like to order something. I said no. I couldn't even remember how to do that. I got back to the office at 11:30. When the elevator opened on the 12th floor, I saw two things at the same time that made me stop dead. First, Marcus was in the conference room with two men I didn't recognize. Suits, folders on the table. Second, our receptionist, Diane, looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face in 7 years of working together, a mix of panic and pity. She walked over and said quietly, "Rachel, they arrived at 10. Marcus told them to wait in the room. He said you were aware." "Aware of what?" She dropped her voice even lower. "He said you and he were working through a disagreement, that they were here about the firm's regulatory license." The firm's regulatory license. I turned toward the conference room. Marcus saw me through the glass. He didn't look away. He just watched, with this blank, almost bored expression. And in that moment I understood that those men weren't his lawyers. They were FINRA investigators, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. And they weren't there for Marcus. They were there for me. The meeting lasted 2 hours and 20 minutes. They showed me documentation I had never seen, transfer records, statements from an account linked to Donovan and Webb's registration, in my name, with my digital signature, two-factor authentication, IP address from a device registered on the firm's system. Everything perfectly documented, everything perfectly false. Someone had created a shadow account in my name, had moved nearly $2.3 million over 18 months, had built a digital trail pointing straight at me with a precision that could only come from someone who knew every single detail of how our internal systems worked. There is only one person in the world with access to all of that. When the investigators left, I stayed alone in the conference room, looking at Atlanta through the panoramic window. Then I picked up my phone and called my son Thomas, 19 years old, Georgia Tech. He picked up on the second ring. "Mom, what's up?" I took a slow breath and said, keeping my voice as steady as I could, "Everything's fine. I just wanted to hear your voice. Love you, kiddo." "Love you too, Mom. Is everything really okay?" "It will be." I hung up and stared at the phone. It will be. I have to make sure it will be. It was almost 2 in the afternoon when Marcus came into the conference room. He closed the door behind him. No rush, no visible concern. He sat down across from me, crossed his arms, and looked at me with that expression I'd seen 1,000 times over 12 years. The one that says he thinks he has complete control of the situation. "I imagine you have a lot of questions," he said. "Just one," I said. "Why?" He tilted his head slightly, like the question was naive. "Business, Rachel. Plain and simple. The firm outgrew a 50-50 agreement. I have a better plan for it. And you were the only thing standing in the way. You set me up. A regulatory trap. I documented irregularities." He made a casual wave with his hand. "The interpretation is yours." I stood up slowly, pressed my hands flat on the table, looked him straight in the face. 12 years, Marcus." He didn't answer. "You have an 8-year-old son," I said. "And one day he's going to grow up and ask you what you did to get where you are. Think carefully about what you're going to tell him." He stood up too, hands in his pockets, and said, with a coldness I had never noticed in him before, or maybe it was always there and I just didn't want to see it, "I'll tell him I did what was necessary. Exactly the way the men you admire so much always did." He walked out. I stood there, and for the first time since that morning, the anger arrived. Not as an explosion, not as tears, but as something cold, precise, and absolutely clear. He spent 12 years teaching me to trust him. I'm going to spend however long it takes figuring out exactly how he did this. And when I have every single piece, I'm going to hand it all back, with interest. Rachel Donovan had just lost the office, a suspended license, her biggest client, and 12 years of trust, all in less than 7 hours. But she still had 3 things Marcus Webb had forgotten to factor in. The first was her son, who couldn't watch his mother fall apart. The second was a near photographic memory of every single transaction she had or hadn't authorized over the past 18 months. And the third? The third Marcus would only find out about when it was already too late. I didn't sleep that night, and not out of despair, by design. By 11 o'clock, I was sitting at my kitchen table in Buckhead with 3 archive boxes stacked beside my chair, a laptop open, and a pen I'd chewed on so much the cap was unrecognizable. I had a rule I'd followed since the very start of my career. A rule my first boss, a man named Gerald Park, who spent 20 years at the SEC before opening his own consultancy, had taught me in my second month on the job. He said, "Rachel, document everything, keep everything. Every authorization, every relevant email, every important call. Everything has a physical backup. Not because you distrust people, because the world sometimes distrusts you." I had followed that rule for 15 years without ever needing it, until now. I started at the beginning. Grabbed the first box, documents from 2022, the year when, according to FINRA, the irregular movements would have started. Every transaction authorization has a date, a signature, a countersignature, and a protocol number. Every digitized transaction has a system access timestamp. Every confirmation email has a header with the originating IP. I drew a timeline on a blank sheet and started filling it in. By 2 a.m, I had covered the first 6 months of 2022. By 4, the full year. There were 18 transactions flagged by FINRA as suspicious. I had found documented authorization for 16 of them. Real authorizations, with my signature, my date, during business hours, on devices I recognized. 2 transactions had no match in my physical files. 2 transactions that, according to FINRA's documentation, had been authorized with my digital signature. I circled both in red. Then I looked at the first one. Date, September 14th, 2023, Thursday. Time of authorization recorded in the system, 3:47 a.m. I stared at that timestamp for a long time. 3:47 in the morning. I picked up my phone and opened my digital calendar. September 13th, 2023. Wednesday night, Annual Conference of the Financial Planning Association, Nashville, Tennessee. I had left Atlanta on the 12th, 3 nights at the Westin Nashville. Documented hotel check-in, corporate credit card, opening dinner on the 12th with 42 other industry professionals. September 14th, 2023. Thursday. Confirmed panel speaker at 9 o'clock. Rachel Donovan, Donovan and Webb Financial Consulting, Atlanta. I was in Nashville. With hotel confirmation, event registration, cameras, badges, attendance lists. And someone had authorized a $480,000 transfer at 3:47 in the morning using my digital signature from a device registered on the firm system, a device I was not using. I got up from the chair and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, Buckhead was quiet. City lights flickering on the horizon. He made a mistake. Just one, but it's enough. It's the thread. And when you find the thread, you pull. The next morning, I called Priya Mehta at 8 sharp. I had met her at a conference in Miami 3 years earlier. Former senior auditor at the SEC for 11 years. Now running her own independent regulatory compliance consultancy in Washington, D.C. Precise, direct, 0 wasted words. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Rachel Donovan," she said before I could speak. "I heard your name yesterday, in a context that wasn't good." "I know. Priya, I need someone who understands how a regulatory scheme gets built from the inside. Not to defend me, to understand exactly how it was done and where it left a trail." 3-second silence. "Do you have your own documentation? 15 years of physical and digital archives, organized by quarter. Do you have a specific mistake identified? An impossible timestamp. I was in another state with documented hotel confirmation, public event attendance, and a credit card record. The authorization was generated at 3:47 in the morning on the same day. Which device was used to generate it? I don't know yet. I need the server log from the office, which I no longer have access to because my license was suspended yesterday. Silence. "Send me what you have," she said. I'll tell you what we can do from there. Thank you, Priya. Don't thank me yet. Send the files. What nobody tells you about being investigated for financial misconduct is the silence. Not the silence of investigators that you expect. It's the silence of people you knew. In the 3 days after Morton's and the FINRA visit, I got messages from 4 people in the industry, not in solidarity, out of curiosity, wanting details they could carry into other conversations. The other 108 contacts in my professional phone, nothing. 2 smaller clients canceled by email. No prior call, no explanation. The story ran in the Atlanta Business Chronicle on the morning of the 3rd day. FINRA investigates Midtown Atlanta consultant for alleged irregular fund movement. 6 paragraphs. My name, the firm's name, estimated value. A regulatory quote confirming the investigation. No quote from me, no right of reply. Marcus knew this was coming. He probably fed the source. 15 years of reputation, 5 days to destroy it. I put the phone on the coffee table, went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and looked at myself in the mirror for about 10 seconds. You have a son to take care of. Thomas, 19, Georgia Tech. You have an impossible time stamp he cannot explain. You have Priya. You have 15 years of documentation he clearly didn't know existed. So, what's the next move? Priya called me on the evening of the 4th day. Rachel, I found something. I sat up straight. Tell me, the 2 irregular transfers you didn't authorize. The pattern is different from the 16 you legitimately approved. The 16 were generated through the firm's internal system with standard 2-factor authentication via SMS to your personal cell. The 2 irregular ones were generated through a secondary authentication module, a contingency access that exists in the system, but is normally only used by administrators during a technical failure. A contingency access that bypasses 2-factor authentication. Exactly. And that module leaves a different log. A log that doesn't show up on the standard control panel. It only shows up in the server's back-end records. Records that are inside the office server. Yes, but... She paused. If you can get a court order for forensic analysis, or if FINRA retrieves the back-end records directly, that log is there. They won't go looking for back-end records on their own. No, unless someone presents an alternative hypothesis documented enough to force a broader investigation. Silence. Priya, I said slowly, what if Marcus didn't only do this with my firm? Silence on the other end. Rachel, if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, I'm suggesting that a man who built this with this level of sophistication didn't test it just once. I might not be the first. And if I'm not the first, there's a trail somewhere he couldn't clean up. Her silence lasted longer this time. I'll need a week, she said. That same evening, Thomas showed up at my door. He had seen the Chronicle piece. He didn't call. He took the MARTA from Georgia Tech to Buckhead and rang my doorbell at 8:30 with a bag of Thai food in his hand. He came in, put the bag on the table, looked at the archive boxes, the open laptop, the timeline taped to the kitchen wall, and said, "You're working the case." "I am." "Are you going to win?" I looked at my son, 19 years old, my mother's eyes. The same little forehead crease I get when I'm concentrating hard. I found the mistake he made. I'm still building the rest. He nodded like that was enough. Opened the bag, put a container in front of me, and sat down on the other side of the table. Then let's eat while you tell me what you need me to do. I looked at him for a second. You don't have to. Mom. He looked straight at me. Tell me what you need. I closed my eyes for just a moment, and then I told him. Rachel had the mistake. She had Priya. She had Thomas. But Marcus had something Rachel didn't know about yet. He had anticipated that she might survive the first wave, and he had prepared a second one. 3 days after Priya started her research, Rachel woke up to a call from the firm's attorney. Marcus had filed a civil lawsuit against her, not for the value of the transfers, for the full value of the Donovan and Webb client portfolio, $470 million. It was a Monday morning when the envelope arrived. Not by mail, by process server. 9:16 in the morning, firm knock on my front door, woke up the neighbor's dog. I opened the door. The man handed me the envelope. I confirmed my name. He left. I went to the kitchen table, my war room, and opened the envelope standing up. Marcus Webb was suing Rachel Donovan for $470 million, alleging deliberate mismanagement, misappropriation of funds, and irreparable damage to the firm's reputation and market value. $470 million, not the $2.3 million from the irregular transfers. The entire portfolio. He's trying to bury me, not just push me out. Bury me under a number so large that no decent attorney will take my case without guarantees I don't have. But he made the same mistake that arrogant people always make. He confused a bold move with a smart move. Those are very different things. I called Priya before 10. Saw the news, she said before I could speak. He filed the civil suit, full portfolio value. I know. Rachel, she paused. I need to tell you what I found, and I need you to be sitting down. I sat down. Talk. The firm I identified, the one that went through the same scheme 18 months before you, is called Meridian Advisory Group, Charlotte, North Carolina. The majority partner signed a confidential out-of-court settlement, $340,000 and a broad non-disclosure clause. Who brokered the deal? The attorney representing the buying party in that settlement is named Stephen Raft, office in Atlanta. I went completely still. Priya, Stephen Raft represents Derek Holloway. 2 seconds silence. How do you know Derek Holloway's name? Because he tried to buy my client portfolio twice in the last 3 years. I turned him down both times. The second time was over lunch at the Four Seasons, and he left with this smile I thought was strange. And now I understand why. Rachel, Priya said slowly, if Derek Holloway is connected to the Charlotte settlement, and the same mechanism was used in both cases, then Marcus didn't work alone. He was recruited. Derek financed the technical structure. Marcus provided the internal access. And Derek walks away with the clients after I fall. That's the model. Target firm collapses under regulatory pressure. Clients migrate to the only firm that had already approached them. I walked to the timeline map on the kitchen wall. Both of Derek's acquisition attempts were there. The dates, the emails, my formal rejections. He didn't take no for an answer. He just changed his approach. Thomas came over that afternoon with his laptop and 2 burgers. He looked at the wall map for about 30 seconds, reading every element I'd pinned there. Then he turned to me and said, "You've got 2 parallel axes, the financial axis, transfers, amounts, dates, and the strategic axis, the acquisition attempts, the settlements, the connections. You need a 3rd one." "Which one?" "The technical one, the mechanism. Because without showing how it was done, not just what and when, but how, you have a theory. With the how, you have proof." Systems engineering student at Georgia Tech, 19 years old. "The contingency authentication module," I said. "Exactly. If that module was exploited in both cases, there's technical documentation about it at the software developer's end. And if the module was accessed without authorization, the developer has a log of that. Federal regulation requires it." I looked at my son. I had raised someone smarter than I deserved. The next morning, I met with Daniel Cho, a financial regulatory attorney that Priya had referred me to. Small office on the 20th floor on Peachtree Street. No receptionist. Daniel Cho, 52, graying hair, cup of green tea, the expression of a man who had seen a lot and was rarely surprised. He read the documents I brought. 40 minutes. I didn't say a word. When he finished, he put the papers down, took off his glasses and looked at me. "The civil suit is a distraction. You know that." "I do." "The goal is to drain your resources and attention while the regulatory investigation moves forward. Most people focus on the civil suit because the number is terrifying. That's what he's counting on. I'm not focusing on the civil suit. I'm building the alternative hypothesis." He looked at me for a moment. "Tell me the hypothesis." 25 minutes. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he said, "You need 3 things for FINRA to reopen with expanded scope. First, the server backend log showing the contingency module was accessed. Second, documented connection between Marcus Webb and Derek Holloway predating the scheme, not contemporaneous prior. Third, technical similarity with the Meridian case in Charlotte. Carol Stanton signed a non-disclosure agreement. Regarding the settlement terms, not the technical mechanism of the attack. If the mechanism in Charlotte is technically identical to Atlanta's, and a forensic expert documents that, her NDA doesn't cover it." I leaned forward. "You're saying I can obtain the technical logs independently of the agreement she signed?" "I'm saying that if you get a court order for forensic analysis of your own server, which is reasonable given that you're the accused and have the right to exculpatory evidence, you have a path." "And the prior connection between Marcus and Derek?" Daniel opened a drawer and pulled out a legal pad. "That," he said, "is what I'm going to find out." It took 6 days. On the morning of the 7th, Daniel called me at 7:40. "Rachel, I found the prior connection. Tell me." Marcus Webb and Derek Holloway were colleagues at Mercer Capital Group, Atlanta 2007 to 2011. Marcus was a senior analyst. Derek was director of business development. They worked together for 4 years before you ever met Marcus. Before I met Marcus. Before we founded the firm. Before any of it. More than that, I found an archived corporate email from Derek to Marcus dated December 2010. What did it say? When you have your own operation, call me. I have an idea that could work for both of us when the market is right. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. December 2010. I had met Marcus in March 2011. He had proposed the partnership in August 2011. Daniel? Yes, that means Marcus came into the partnership already having a plan with Derek. Not necessarily from day one, but the relationship predates your partnership by at least 4 months, and the email establishes intent. 12 years, I said quietly. I spent 12 years building a firm with a man who came in through the back door. Rachel, no, I know what this is, and I know what I do with it. That evening I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I stopped working at 8 o'clock, closed the laptop, folded the files, heated up some soup Thomas had left in the freezer, sat at the table without my phone, without documents, without a pen, and looked at my cup for about 15 minutes. 12 years. Maybe he came in with the plan fully formed. Maybe it grew slowly as he watched the firm grow and calculated the right moment. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what was taped to my kitchen wall, a map of every piece, every documented connection, every verified date. Every node of the network built to destroy me, now exposed, named, tracked. He had spent 2 years planning my fall. I had spent 6 weeks building the response. The response was ready. 6 weeks after the morning the floor disappeared, Rachel Donovan had the complete map, the impossible timestamp, the fake authentication module, the Meridian case, the 2010 email, Stephen Raft connecting both schemes, everything documented, everything verified. But Marcus Webb wasn't sitting still. On the morning Daniel Cho filed the petition for the court order, Marcus made a move nobody had predicted. He went to Elliot Crane and proposed an agreement that would put Rachel Donovan's name on a document she could never challenge publicly. It was Thursday morning when the phone rang with a number I wasn't expecting to see. Sophia Crane, 28 years old, Elliot's daughter. I'd known her since she was 17, watched her grow up at industry events, sent flowers when she graduated from Georgetown Law. I picked up on the second ring. Sophia. Rachel. Her voice was low, tense, like someone calling from a place where they don't want to be overheard. I need to tell you something, and I need you to know my dad doesn't know I'm calling. I sat down slowly. I'm listening. Marcus Webb met with my father 2 nights ago at his office after hours. I was downstairs waiting to have dinner with my dad, and I heard part of it. She stopped. Rachel, he asked my father to sign a statement saying you admitted irregularities during the lunch at Morton's, that you said you had made creative decisions with his portfolio. My stomach dropped. And your father is considering signing. 2 seconds silence. He's confused. Marcus presented him with a version of events that sounds coherent if you don't know the technical details. My dad has trusted Marcus since he met him, and he's scared. Scared that his money was actually compromised, and that signing is the way to make sure he gets it back. Sophia, when is your father planning to sign? I don't know, but Marcus asked to have the document back by Friday. Tomorrow. Thank you. You didn't have to do this. You sent flowers to my graduation, she said simply. And you didn't do what they're saying you did. I know how to recognize when someone's being set up. I hung up and stood still for exactly 10 seconds. Then I called Daniel Cho. The order came through, Daniel said before I could speak. This morning, Thomas Brewer is on his way to the server now. Daniel, Marcus is trying to get a statement from Elliot Crane by tomorrow. A false statement about what I said at Morton's. How much time do you have? 24 hours. Maybe less. 3-second silence. I knew that silence. Daniel calculating. If Thomas Brewer confirms the server log today, and if what we're expecting is there, I can have the reopening petition filed this afternoon. FINRA has to notify all parties before any hearing. The moment Marcus gets that notification, he'll know the game has changed. And if Elliot signs before that? A statement about what you said in a private conversation is weak evidence without corroboration. But, he paused, if you can talk to Elliot directly before tomorrow, with the real facts in front of him, you pull the ground out from under Marcus before he can stand on it. Elliot won't take my call. Probably not, but Sophia did. Thomas Brewer called me at 2:47 in the afternoon. I was standing in the living room, couldn't sit. Rachel. Thomas. It's here. 3 words. I closed my eyes. Tell me, the contingency module was accessed twice during the period under investigation. First time, September 14, 2023, at 3:47 a.m. Second time, November 3rd, 2023, at 2:19 a.m. Both irregular transfers flagged by FINRA. And the device? This is the detail that closes the case, Rachel. His voice was completely controlled, but I heard something underneath, the restraint of someone holding something important. The device that accessed the contingency module on both occasions is not registered to Donovan and Webb. It is registered to a company called DH Consulting LLC. DH. Derek Holloway. DH Consulting LLC was incorporated in Georgia in January 2022, 10 months before the first irregular transfer. The registered address is the same address as Holloway Wealth Partners' office in Buckhead. The silence that followed was different from all the others of the past 6 weeks. It was the silence of something ending. Thomas, can you have the forensic report to Daniel Cho within 2 hours? Already writing it. Sophia called me back at 4. My dad is meeting me for dinner at 7. I convinced him to let you present your side before he signs anything. You have 30 minutes, Rachel. That's all I could get. It's enough. At 6:50, I was at the restaurant. Sophia was already there, beside her father. Elliot Crane looked at me as I walked over with an expression that mixed discomfort, guilt, and the stiffness of a man who had made a decision and didn't want to be talked out of it. I sat down, put a thin folder on the table. Not thick, not intimidating, thin. Elliot, I'm not here to ask you to trust me. I'm here to show you what actually happened. You've known me for 11 years. All I'm asking for is 30 minutes. He looked at the folder, then at me. 30 minutes, he said. I started with the timestamp, explained what it was, what it meant, why it was impossible. Laid out the Nashville hotel record, the conference badge, the attendance sheet, then the server log. No jargon, just This device accessed the system at this time. This device belongs to this company. This company belongs to Derek Holloway. Then the 2010 email. Marcus and Derek. 4 months before Marcus proposed the partnership to me. Elliot stared at the email for a long time. You're saying Marcus came into your firm? I'm not saying anything. The documents are saying it. I'm just sitting here. He went quiet. After about 2 minutes, Elliot Crane picked up his folder, the one Marcus had left with him, and gently pushed it to the center of the table away from himself. I'm not signing this, he said. I breathed slowly and said nothing. Rachel, I apologize. I should have called you first. Elliot, you were deceived by someone who spent years building credibility specifically to be able to do this. That's not weakness on your part. That's his skill at lying. He looked at me for a moment. What do you need from me? For now, nothing. Let FINRA do its work. I stood up, thanked Sophia with a look, picked up my folder, and walked out. Outside, Atlanta at night was warm and clear. I walked to my car, sat down, closed the door, and sat there for about 30 seconds with my hands on the wheel, one piece at a time. That's how you rebuild something. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in May. 6 weeks after the reopening petition. Conference room at the FINRA regional office in Atlanta. 10th floor, long table, acoustic panels, 2 windows with the blinds half shut. I arrived with Daniel. Marcus arrived with 2 attorneys I had never seen. Derek Holloway was not present. We found out later he had hired criminal defense counsel the week before. Someone had warned him the scope had changed. The FINRA investigator running the hearing was Patricia Wynn, 55, short white hair, eyes that didn't miss a thing, 18 years at the SEC before FINRA. She opened the hearing with one sentence. This hearing has been reconvened with expanded scope based on evidence presented by the originally investigated party, suggesting a pattern of conduct that goes beyond the initial case. We'll begin with the forensic server log. Marcus looked at his attorneys. I looked at the table in front of me. Thomas Brewer presented the forensic report in 42 minutes. Every line of the log, every timestamp, every access record from the DH consulting device, the technical comparison with Meridian in Charlotte, the identical contingency module signature in both attacks. Patricia Wynn asked precise technical questions. Brewer answered everyone without hesitation. Then Daniel presented the complete timeline, the twist and 10 email. Both acquisition attempts by Derek, Stephen Raft connecting Charlotte and Atlanta. The entire scheme chronology rebuilt month by month. When Daniel finished, Patricia Wynn took off her glasses, set them on the table, and looked directly at Marcus Webb. Mr. Webb, the opposing counsel has presented evidence that the device which accessed the contingency module on both investigated transfers is registered to a company connected to Derek Holloway. Would you like to comment? One of Marcus's attorneys leaned forward. My client reserves the right. I didn't ask your client, Patricia said, with a calm that was more cutting than any anger. I asked Mr. Webb. Marcus stared at the table. 10 seconds. 20. He didn't answer. Patricia Wynn put her glasses back on. We'll take a 15-minute break. During the break, I stepped into the hallway to get some water. Marcus came out a moment later, alone, without his attorneys. We faced each other in the hallway like two strangers who had shared a space for too long. Ties slightly loosened. Eyes with an expression I had never seen in him before. Not regret, exactly, but the look of someone recalculating damage on an equation that had gone wrong. He stopped. I stopped. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Then he said quietly, "You were faster than I calculated." "No," I said. "I was exactly as fast as I needed to be. You just didn't know me as well as you thought you did." He kept looking at me. "What do you want, Rachel, an apology?" "No. I want you to walk back into that room and understand that what you did has a name, has weight, and has consequences, and that an apology doesn't change any of those three things." Pause. "What about the firm?" he said. "What are you going to do with it?" I picked up my water, straightened up, and looked at him one last time. "Keep building it, without your name on the door." And I walked back into the room. The settlement came 3 weeks later. Marcus Webb accepted the regulatory terms to avoid criminal prosecution. Permanent suspension of his financial market operating license, full cooperation with the Derek Holloway investigation, and restitution of funds to affected clients. The civil suit against me was dropped the same day. Derek Holloway was indicted by the Department of Justice in coordination with the SEC 4 weeks later. The case included Donovan and Webb, Meridian in Charlotte, and as the investigation expanded, 2 more firms in different states that had been hit with the same mechanism over the previous 3 years. Elliot Crane came back to the portfolio 6 weeks after the hearing. He called one morning, no warning, and said, "Are you still managing wealth or just prosecuting people now?" I laughed. For the first time in a long time, I actually laughed. Both, apparently. "Then send me the contract back." The firm's license was fully reinstated. Rebuilding the client portfolio took months. Not every client came back, and I accepted that. Some had migrated, some had grown uncertain, some simply didn't want to revisit what had happened. But the ones who came back by choice, and that was worth more than the ones who had stayed out of inertia. The firm was renamed in August. Donovan Financial Advisory. No second name on the door. On the night of the new office opening, Thomas came straight from Georgia Tech on the train, again without warning, and showed up at the door holding a cheap bottle of champagne and a wide smile. "You won," he said. "We documented," I corrected. "There's a difference." He put the bottle in my hand and stepped inside, looking at the empty walls, the boxes still to be unpacked, the new nameplate on the glass door. "Feels smaller without his name," he said. "Feels more honest," I said. He thought about that for a second and nodded. "More honest is better." I opened the bottle, poured 2 plastic cups from a box not yet unpacked, and we stood in the middle of the empty office and toasted without saying a word. There was nothing that needed to be said. The work had been done. The hands were clean. I learned a lot of things in the 8 months between that March morning and the night we opened the new office. I learned that a sophisticated scheme always has a mistake. Always. Because the person who builds it trusts their own intelligence too much and underestimates the persistence of whoever is on the other side. I learned that documentation isn't paperwork, it's armor. And you only find out how much your armor is worth when the hit comes. I learned that the people who stay when everything falls apart, an auditor in Washington, an attorney in a small office on Peachtree Street, a 19-year-old kid with a bag of Thai food, those people are worth more than any $470 million portfolio. And I learned that the cleanest revenge has no anger in it, no speech, no shouting in hallways. It has a server log. It has an impossible timestamp. It has a timeline taped to a kitchen wall. And it has the patience of a woman who spent 8 months building exactly what needed to be built, piece by piece, until the day she pushed back and simply showed what was true. Clean hands don't need to explain themselves. They just need to show up. Hook de fechamento. TRF dos DESON 014. The Clean Hands. Gravado pelo avatar de introdução. Apenas áudio, sem imagens. Duração: aproximadamente 40 segundos. If you made it to the end of this story, you already know what Rachel proved. That the most powerful thing you can do when someone tries to destroy you is not to scream, not to beg, and not to fall apart. It's to sit down at a table, open a box of files, and build the truth back piece by piece until there is nothing left to hide. She didn't win because she was lucky. She won because she was prepared before she ever knew she needed to be. And that's the part that should stay with you. If this story hit you the way we think it did, drop a comment below. Tell us the moment that got you the most. And if you know someone who's been through something like this, share this with them. Sometimes people just need to see that clean hands always find their way back to the surface. We'll see you in the next file, the Retribution file. Justice is never lost. It just needs to be documented.